Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Season 11 of the Dark Money Files, in which we shine a light into a murky world. I am Ray Blake, and with me is my co-host, friend and business partner, Graham Barrow. Hello, Graham.
Hello, Ray.
Now, at the end of the last episode, you hinted that an interesting story was about to break. And I assume, from the title of the episode, that it has broken.
It has, Ray, but to be clear, although much of what we're going to talk about will be in the past tense, the scam companies involved continue to be incorporated and people's identities continue to be stolen, and financial institutions, third-party suppliers and many other types of businesses continue to be at risk.
We join this in media res, as it were.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, this isn't just about telling a story, is it? People listening could well be working for companies that are at some risk from being conned by these villains.
Well, very much so, Ray, and others, however unlikely it may seem, are as likely to find their name appearing on one or more companies of which they have never heard.
Now, this all sounds a bit scary, but equally fascinating.
Well, yes, it is. And obviously the tale has been reported across UK media, but this will be the only source, listeners, of the full story.
Yeah, that, of course, is because the story came from us in the first place.
It flipping well did, Ray, and we should be proud of it. But also, to be fair, the mainstream media simply doesn't have the time or the remit to do the whole thing justice.
No, absolutely. So where are we going to begin then?
Ray, we are going to begin in the town in which you currently reside.
Hemel Hempstead.
Exactly.
Okay, so how come?
Well, because the very first sighting of the very first company in the network, or at least the first one we identified, happened to be registered there.
Close to me, is it?
It's about a 7-minute drive down the road. That's also home to West Herts College.
Well, I know it well, and actually, I have to tell you, I could walk there in about 7 minutes, to be honest. What sort of business was it?
It was a restaurant, Ray. I couldn't quite dovetail that into our snappy little title, so I opted for bar as the closest type of business that worked with the overall pun.
Oh, I wouldn't beat yourself up over that, Graham. It's a very fine piece of work nonetheless.
Thank you.
But there are lots of restaurants down that road. Not unusual, given its proximity to a college catering for the young people.
Oh, catering. Very good, right. Very good.
Yeah, okay, but look, that doesn't really answer the question. What was suspicious about this company?
Well, to begin with, nothing at all.
Then you're going to have to explain why you spotted it.
Well, I'll be happy to, but I think before I do, I think you might like to take them through the concept that we call network risk.
Ah, yes, network risk, of course. One of the issues we have with much of the way due diligence is currently conducted is that it relies on individual data points far too much. Now, this means, for example, that when a company is first incorporated, there's very little information to go on in assessing the risks.
Well, exactly. I mean, you might run a check on the director, you might look at the type of business it's designed to do, you might check the address, but if that all adds up, what else have you got to go on?
Indeed. Now, that's not the approach we take, though, is it, Graham?
It is not at all, Ray. We like to look at the context in which the business has been registered. Have other businesses been registered at the same address or nearby recently?
Has the director been named on other recent businesses? Or if not, have they previously been a director? And if so, what happened to their past companies?
Has there been a spike of similar types of businesses, either nationally or locally?
In fact, anything that might be an outlier to the normal ebb and flow of business registrations.
Exactly, which is why the first company in an emerging network is unlikely to raise many red flags.
Now, when was this first incorporation, Graham?
It was the 10th of December of last year, Ray.
OK, so in the run-up to Christmas then?
Exactly.
And at what point did it start to emerge that a network was forming?
Well, I would say it was the 19th of December 2023.
An interesting date, because it's my wife's birthday and it's one of your boys' birthdays as well, isn't it?
It is.
I think we can write that off as coincidence on this particular occasion. But why is that date the date where we identified that it was a network?
Well, because that was the day that 2 restaurants were registered in the name of the same person to 2 different addresses.
Ah, gotcha. Now, that is, of course, entirely possible if someone was at the start of setting up, say, a chain of restaurants.
Well, that is very true, Ray, but I think it's unlikely that one of those would be called Ritz Restaurant Limited, located at the same address in London's Piccadilly as the well-known hotel of the same name.
Yeah, you're kidding, surely.
No, I'm not.
OK. Now, this is the one that's been referred to in the news reports, right?
It is the very same, yup.
OK. Now, I remember talking about this one. It had the 24-year-old owner who lives in Northern Ireland, right?
That is exactly the one, Ray, although we do need to emphasise once again that the director named knows as much about this company as the real Ritz Hotel does.
Right, so his identity was stolen and it wasn't him undertaking that incorporation.
Exactly.
OK. Now, while I'm jumping ahead slightly here, they came back and struck again, didn't they?
Well, yes, but I think it's worth the quick jump, Ray. So do you want to explain?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the beginning of February, only a few days ago, a new company called the Ritz London Restaurant Limited was registered to the same Piccadilly address as the hotel and the previous clone.
Was it the same director?
It wasn't, no. This time it was, even more unbelievably, a 19-year-old woman from Greater Manchester.
Well, of course it was.
And this highlights another important point about STP.
Straight-through processing.
That's the chap. It's an issue we're going to come back to. But unlike once upon a time, when a human being might look at a business account application and decide that it was actually quite unlikely that a 19-year-old from Manchester would be registering a restaurant to a hotel that had had its own restaurant for well over 100 years, it doesn't work that way anymore, does it?
It does not. We do frictionless onboarding. We do electronic ID checks. But no one is there to say, that doesn't make any sense.
Regrettably. And as we're about to find out, that's going to be a common theme of our story. So, what happened next?
Well, I think the next day of note, Ray, was Christmas Day.
Oh, Christmas Day is always of note, Graham. It's a joyous occasion. It's a big day for lots of families across the world.
Yeah, true, but not so much for registering a new company.
It wasn't on my to-do list this year, I have to tell you.
Well, not on mine either, but nevertheless, 335 companies appeared on the register on Christmas Day last year.
Blimey, business never sleeps, does it? Now,
No.
I have to tell you, that's almost certainly more than most countries get on their busiest day of the year.
Well, that wouldn't surprise me at all, Ray, but in this case, a huge proportion of those companies were part of half a dozen or more networks that we've been monitoring.
Including the restaurant clones?
Yes, indeed.
Now, to be fair, there were only 4 of those registered on Christmas Day, but they did have something in common, didn't they?
They did.
Well, yeah, well, quite so, yeah. Repeated words.
Yes, it was. So we had a khaki, we had a stap, and a show, along with a single Sarastro, which actually followed hard on the heels of a double Sarastro, which was registered 4 days previously.
And all of these at addresses that coincided with the single word versions, the real restaurants.
It's a bit of a giveaway, wasn't it?
Yes, and if that wasn't enough, along with a Barbary, on the 28th of December came a notable Franco Manca London Bridge restaurant.
But there is a Franco Manca at London Bridge, Ray. I've eaten there.
Ah, yeah, but this one was particularly notable. For the benefit of our listeners who can't see it on paper. The new Franco Manca ended with 2 A's at the end of Manca instead of the real version that only has 1.
Yes, a precedent which is going to crop up more frequently, I think, as we go along.
Okay.
And let's be honest, no major restaurant chain is going to spell its own name wrong if it registers a new, entity.
Or decide to incorporate a long time after it starts trading at a given premises.
Well, yes. So by the end of December 2023, we had ourselves a network. But at that point, it was only about 20 companies, so it wasn't one of the biggies.
Not at that point, no, but nevertheless, we did decide it was worth creating a specific alert to identify additions.
Yes, and so we did, as you know. We've chosen not to share all the indicators that we were checking in the background because we don't want to make life too easy for the villains.
No, we don't, and we do know they're listening. And then, early in January, you were contacted by Tom Simons from the BBC.
Well, that's right. He's been following our work and was interested to see if there was a story that he could get into the mainstream news arena.
Which, as we know, needs a storyline that's easier to connect to than some of our more technical reporting.
Exactly.
And his inquiry arrived just as a small pocket of clones was opening up in Cambridge.
Yes, there was a fake Zizzy and a fake Ivy and a whole bunch of others.
And then shortly after he'd decided to run with the story and got editorial approval to do so, it all rather took off, didn't it?
Well, it really did, and I think it's worth spending a few minutes talking about exactly what we mean by taking off.
Shall we start with the directors?
I think we should.
Okay, so to begin with, through late December and early January, they were using each director's name quite sparingly. A couple of companies with one name, a couple more with another.
Yeah, which is enough for our systems to pick them up, but it's not especially obvious to the casual viewer.
No, and I think we can point to the 8th of January as a bit of a tipping point, because up until then they've been registering fewer than 10 companies a day. But on the 8th of January, it shot up to 22.
It did exactly that, but not just that. 7 of them named the same director, even though they were located across different addresses in London, Manchester and Cambridge.
And then a week later, on the 15th and 16th of January, they registered a total of 83 new companies.
Which I have to say lit up our alert system like the Oxford Street Christmas lights.
Which, at that point, they hadn't taken down yet.
No.
And in fact, Oxford Street subsequently became home to one of the clones, didn't it?
Yeah, not just any old address, by the way, in Oxford Street, Ray, and anyone who knows it will get this, because this was a clone of the restaurant that exists at the roof of Selfridges, the iconic Oxford Street store.
Yeah, I was there only recently, but when I was there, I had no inkling that it was run by a 20-year-old lad who appears to live off the Paisley Road in Glasgow.
Which we need to make out. It's another stolen identity, Ray, and this poor chap also had his name used on a counterfeit lease, which another restaurant owner told me was used to try and hijack their electricity provider at the restaurant they own in Birmingham.
Well, presumably that was to generate identification documents to make account opening a little bit easier.
Well, I guess so. I mean, counterfeit leases, you think, God. Anyway, let's come back to that in a minute.
Yeah, let's. Let's finish off our chat around the tipping point first, though. So, Tom at the BBC was getting very interested in the story by now, especially as there was starting to be a heavy concentration of London restaurants, and one poor chap's name was cropping up repeatedly.
Yeah, not just that, but the real person whose identity had been stolen was actually pretty easy to identify, which meant if he was prepared to be interviewed, it would give the story far greater human interest. And mainstream news needs that to have a focal point. I mean, it needs a victim, if you like, to garner attention to be carried on a primetime news bulletin.
Yeah, and as we know only too well, these are often seen as victimless crimes, which, while we know it isn't true, can be hard to explain on a 3-minute news item.
Exactly. And Stephen, as we shall call him, subsequently agreed to do an on-camera interview, which was shown as part of the report.
Sadly, although he eventually had 38 restaurants registered in his name, he was nowhere near the top of the charts.
No, the top scorer, if you can call him that, had 71 companies registered in his name, followed by someone else with 53, another one with 50, one with 44, and another one with 40.
So just a handful of stolen identities were responsible for the registration of over 300 companies. And how many people so far have appeared as directors?
Well, Ray, as we record this episode, the total's running at 59, but again, it is still growing daily.
And how many companies are currently in this network, Graham?
790, Ray.
Almost all of which were registered within the space of 6 weeks.
Yes.
It's astonishing, really, isn't it?
Astonishing, yes, but sadly, it's not that unusual.
So before we look to draw some conclusions, any other standouts for you?
Yeah, I think the first one is the brazenness of what they were doing. In the end, they were cloning really well-known celebrity chefs like Heston Blumenthal and Yotam Ottolenghi. I mean, it must have been obvious that these people would react when a company's house letter turned up on their restaurant doorstep.
Which only serves to underline the short-term nature of these companies. Had we not been involved, it would have taken maybe a few weeks for that paperwork to start being correlated and for people to start asking difficult questions. But we didn't speed it up very much. They're not designed, these companies, for long-term use, or I should say abuse. They register, they open a bank account, get loans or overdrafts or whatever, clear them out, and they're gone.
Yep, which is why we call them burner companies.
Exactly.
So what else did you notice, Ray?
Well, in the end, it wasn't just the brazenness, but the laziness into which they eventually lapsed.
And how so?
Well, I mean, if you look carefully, the evidence points to the fact that they were copying and pasting from a prepared spreadsheet or a list of some sort.
Do you want to explain to our listeners why we think that?
Yeah, it's a bit technical, but twice they managed to incorporate the company in the name of the director rather than the restaurant they were cloning. So although the registered address was the restaurant's, the company name was actually the director's.
OK, but that's not entirely conclusive.
No, I agree, it isn't. But then, on the 27th of January, they incorporated a company with 2 different restaurants as the company name.
Really?
Yeah, they did. By that time, they were just cloning every restaurant in a particular street or within close proximity of each other. On the 27th of January, it was the turn of Brick Lane, alongside great swathes of Bradford.
And
one company is now named after a restaurant in Brick Lane alongside another one in Bishopsgate.
That's just the one company name?
Yeah.
Probably quite a big name then, isn't it?
No comment.
And that's not, to be honest, the kind of mistake you're likely to make if you are sitting at a computer manually typing in the details on an online form.
And thinking about what you're doing, exactly.
Yeah. OK, so point taken. What else do we need to add?
Well, again, at the time of recording, we're starting to notice a change in behaviour.
Brought about by the publicity?
Well, possibly.
What's the change, Ray?
Well, they appear to be moving away from restaurants to other types of businesses, including sports retailers and advertising agencies.
See, I find that quite intriguing because advertising agencies in particular have been part of one, if not 2, other highly organised networks of suspicious companies for quite some time.
Yeah, and there look to be common elements between the two.
Yeah, which might mean it's either the same organised crime group involved in both or more networks, or maybe it's a group of professional criminal corporate service providers who create them for others for a fee.
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible.
OK, I have a feeling we may come back to this again, partly because we find it so damn interesting. but I think for now we've covered the meat of the current situation.
OK, so where next, Graham?
We've spoken over the last few days about what we're calling the democratisation of crime. We'll explain on the next episode. So, and we were due to do an episode about changes to the rules governing banks' responses to fraudulent payments. I think we should combine those two elements and do an episode about the way that technology has changed the landscape and how it is affecting all of us. And I think that element of straight-through processing, STP, we raised earlier, just might also get expanded on in this context.
I'm looking forward to it.